No people find each other more absurd than lovers. This is Pints with Jack, Season 5, Episode 23, The Four Loves, Our Eros. Good morning, everyone. Pints with Jack is your favourite weekly C.S. Lewis podcast, where three friends, Andrew, David and Matt, break down and discuss the works of C.S. Lewis. This season we're talking about love, slowly and deliberately working our way through The Four Loves, the book where Lewis writes about affection, friendship, romance and charity. And since we've finished another chapter and another love, today is another special episode. In previous months, we've interviewed people with whom we share storky affection and philia friendship, and it's now time for Eros romance. Today, Andrew and I interview our wives, which explains the quotation at the beginning of the episode, which comes from The Great Divorce. No people find each other more absurd than lovers. And we begin with Mrs. Marie Bates. Mrs. Bates, welcome to Pints with Jack.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, it's rather unusual for a guest to invite another guest onto the show with them, so would you please explain to the listeners who you have with you?
I am joined by my partner in crime, the one who I am never without, Mr. Alexander Charbel Bates.
And he's with us because he decides he didn't want to sleep. So he's part of this interview as well. So welcome, sir.
He's not talking, but he has been talking.
Yes.
We are hoping he will not talk.
Well, we asked people for questions, and there was lots of talk about asking us really awkward stuff, but nobody did. So, no.
There's Alexander.
No, you can't ask questions. Not yet. People have asked about our... We're going to see if this works. People have asked about our courtship.
He thinks he's a part of the conversation. Okay, shh. Go ahead, Daddy.
Okay. Can you tell people about how we met, our courtship?
Sure.
Because this chapter has all been about Eros. So tell the people how romantic I am.
Yeah, well, David and I met about 3.5 years ago. Is that correct?
Sounds about right, yeah.
And I had just finished a period of discernment. I thought I might entertain the idea of religious life, and I had just spent some time in a convent in Mexico, and it was very clearly not my vocation. And so beautiful, though, and a really good time of recollection. But when I came back to the States, I sort of just said this little prayer and said, Lord, if you want me to date, I'm open to it, and I'm not going to do anything, but I'm open to it. And yeah, he does not like that strategy. And then literally within a week of me saying that prayer, I was at a talk one night at our Mother of Confidence in San Diego, and the talk was being given by this cute English man who was really, really funny, and I didn't know if I liked him like that, but I was interested in him, and so I stayed after the talk in a line to talk to him, but it was taking a long time because a lot of people lined up to talk to him. So I went and visited with my friends for a while, and I came back, and I was the last person in line at that point. And then David and I ended up chatting for maybe 15 minutes or so after that, and I just thought he seemed like a great person. He quoted some poetry to me, Khalil Gibran, and I really liked him. So then I think what was next? You found me on Facebook.
Because there was a sign-in sheet, so I might have glanced over and seen which Maries signed in, so I had your last name, so I found you on Facebook, like a stalker.
And then, he was trying to, subtly introduced the idea of lunch together. And I said I wanted to go to this English pub with him if he would take me. And so...
I have learnt that subtlety is mostly lost on Americans.
And especially on me.
Yeah, I think I said something along... We were talking about English food, and I said, the only real place that I found that I like here in San Diego is Shakespeare's Pub by the airport. And so what I was expecting her to say is to either indicate that she would really like to go sometime, hint, hint, or there would just be no follow-up to that, in which case I know that I'm being friend-zoned and we can just move on from there. But instead, what did you say? I think it was something along the lines of...
I won't go unless you take me.
Yeah.
He told me about it and I said, sounds great. I won't go unless you take me. Which is probably true. I don't know what else... none of my friends hung out there, so I don't know what else would have drawn me down, except maybe I would have been intrigued at some point and gone and tried the food. But I'm really glad that we did go on that first date.
Well, let's talk about that first date. First of all, how many minutes late were you?
20. 20 minutes late, but I was getting my nails done, so it was important. And then I realized after I'd known Mr. David Bates for a little bit of time that he cared little to none for painted nails, so I probably could have forgone that. But yes, I was late because I was getting my nails done. But I didn't tell him that, which is the key to success, guys.
Probably a smart idea. Mm-hmm.
But it was a great date. I was pretty nervous, actually. And we had discovered that we had a bit of an age gap by that point.
Mm-hmm. I had dropped lots of subtle hints as we were chatting on Facebook about my age, just because I was pretty sure that you were a good bit younger than I was, and I wasn't entirely sure if you had twigged that I am older than I look.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And David, I have aged him with marriage and babies, but you still look younger than you are. But at the time, you especially looked younger than you were. So I thought you were, I think, 32 or something, which was, not that far from... Anyway, we have an age gap, and I thought that was going to be a bigger deal than it actually is or was ever.
Really, the only way in which that affects our relationship at all is that I will not reference various 80s TV shows, at least until I've made you watch them on BritBox or on YouTube clips.
Yeah, I think you definitely have more references like that in your back pocket. But
also, your mother kept a very tight leash on what TV you were allowed to watch.
Yeah, yes.
I watched a lot of trash.
Yeah, thank you, Mom. Yeah, so I was nervous, but conversation flowed, and yes, baby. And pretty soon you and I started talking about the Great Divorce, because I had gone on a vacation basically right after I met David, and...
Wasn't it 2? You had a wedding and then something else.
You
came to Wisconsin, right?
I was gone for 2... Yeah, I came to Wisconsin. I was gone for 2 weeks straight. And so I said, yeah, I'd like to go out with you, but it'll have to be when... Yeah, I know, Mama's silly. But it'll have to be after I get back. And David patiently waited, and we chatted and had actually really fun conversation that way while I was gone. But David swears that I did this on purpose, but I truly did not. And I don't have... the ability to trick anyone, David, and you know that, so you know I'm telling the truth. But I had packed the collected C.S. Lewis, which had a number of books in it. I think it had Screw Tape Letters, The Great Divorce, and some others. And
Alexander doesn't sound convinced.
Alexander says The Great Divorce is his favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went on vacation, we started talking about C.S. Lewis at some point, and you said The Great Divorce was your favorite. And then I said, I have it with me. I'll read it on vacation. I love taking book recommendations to this day. I mean, that's where I get...
One of your love languages.
Yeah, that is one of my love languages. And so I read The Great Divorce that day. I was just home at my sister-in-law and brother's house, and I just sat on the couch and read it and thought it was really interesting and wonderful. And so we talked about that on the date, and David later told me that secured... Yes, baby. Yes. That secured me at least 3 dates or something like that.
Yeah.
Right, baby?
It didn't really matter how bad it went from there on in. I said what my favorite book in the world was. She read it in anticipation of our first date.
Yeah. We had a good start. And, you know, a really good sign when you meet somebody is that you really can't wait to see them again. And I loved our conversation, and I thought he was such a respectful and classy person when I met him. And so I was itching to see him again. And so I think I suggested the next date, or 2 dates later maybe. And
I think I suggested the next one, and then you recommended. And the next few dates happened in fairly rapid succession. I still...
It's blurry for me.
Yeah, me too. I'm pretty sure at least on one day we had 2 dates.
You know what? I have all my texts still from that time, I think.
Okay.
Maybe. I got an iPhone after we had been dating for a little while, so maybe not. But I'll look. I'll see if I can find the timeline.
One of the many ways in which I improved your life. Got you off that nasty Android nonsense.
I actually felt like he would like me more if I had an iPhone, and I thought, this is really materialistic, but I really care. I really want him to like me. So I needed a new phone anyway. Mine had broken, and so I replaced it with an iPhone. But anyway.
And you weren't wrong.
No, I know. You did like me more after. Yeah, so, and then... I think it was our 3rd or 4th date. We went to Hooley's in San Diego, which is a pub that we took Alexander to recently. Mm-hmm. But
the bartender had to cut him off.
Yeah.
It's like, you've had too much, man.
Yeah, milk drunk. We went there. We had just this flowing conversation, and we were talking about things that mattered to us, and you matter to us. And I just kept thinking, man, I like him so much. Like, he cares about all of the same things that I really care about. And I was getting really excited and just enjoying being with David. And that night was the first night that David held my hand. And it was just, it made my heart, like, burst into a million pieces. But, yeah, that was the beginning. And it was really fun and exciting. And I don't know. I can't recommend enough. If you don't have someone yet, ladies, just wait for somebody that makes you feel like that you can't wait to see again, who's just... Alexander agrees. Yeah, wait for somebody who just makes you feel that wonderful and treats you so well.
One of the other questions I had down was, did we have any memorable dates?
Yeah, for sure. We have a lot of memorable dates. You know what my favorite date I think that we've ever had was? It was for our 1 year together. We went on... Alexander, you don't even know this story.
You weren't here yet.
You goose. We went on a boat cruise in San Diego Bay, and we dressed up in fancy clothes, and we ate delicious food, and we danced, and we went under the Coronado Bridge several times.
And we were told that if we kissed underneath the Coronado Bridge,
we would be together for at least 80 years, I think. And so, I don't know, it was kind of a turning point.
Hang on, you missed a little bit on that, because the first time we went under it, we didn't realize that we'd be going under it several times over the course of the night.
Yeah, this is true.
But when we eventually came to the point at which we were going underneath it for the first time...
We weren't together for some reason. We weren't together.
One of us was in the bathroom, the other one was...
So we ran to each other. Do you remember? We ran to each other, and we ended up in this little hallway of the boat, and we kissed under the bridge as we went under it. And I remember thinking, thank God. And then every time we went under it, the DJ said the same thing. And I thought, oh, we actually had 15 opportunities to get that kiss right. But not that I'm complaining.
I'm sorry, Alexander. It's kind of gross.
I know. He goes, kissing you. But yeah, that was kind of a turning point in our relationship. I think it was actually maybe... It wasn't exactly on our 1 year together. It was a little after, but we had just grown a lot in trust of each other, but me especially, like, I had wounds that needed to heal, and I was finally starting to really trust David, and we were loving each other well, and all of that. Everything was kind of falling into place, and it was just a really exciting time. And it's always so fun to dress up and go to a wedding, or dress up and go to dinner somewhere. And so I think that's my favorite date that we've had.
And one of the couples also on the boat voted us best dancers.
Yeah. Yes. David is a really good dancer, and so he was leading me all over the dance floor. I think we did a little salsa and some other...
A little bit of swing.
Yeah.
A little bit of foxtrot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you like to dance too.
One of the other dates that we went on fairly early on, we had a picnic in one of the parks.
That was about
Park.
a month or two in. Yeah, I remember that.
And it was kind of funny because...
Did you enjoy that date?
Absolutely, because you bought food.
You guys, the women, I should say women, the key to your man's heart is very simple. Food, smiles, kindness. Those things.
But you said afterwards that it was also a little bit of a test.
Yeah.
Because that was the first time you fed me Lebanese food.
Yeah. Well, I thought if he likes this, then this is a really good sign for him with my family, because it's delicious food. I mean, you'd be crazy not to like it. But if you didn't like it, or if you were turned out to be sort of a picky person who couldn't go with it and try something new, that kind of says a lot about the kind, that wasn't the kind of person I was looking for. Mm-hmm. So we took this picnic dinner to S5E23 Park, and we had lamb, I think, and tabbouleh, and za'atar, and I don't know what else I made, but it was delicious and garlicky and wonderful. And then I think we went and saw a movie after. Yes,
it was The Incredibles 2.
Yeah, that was really fun. And you passed the test. Flying colors.
And all I did was just eat what was put in front of me.
Yeah.
This is one of my main skills.
Now I know that I could literally feed you peanut butter on bread and you'd be very thankful. Mm-hmm. But at that point, I still wanted to impress you. Are you okay? We've got a little man still hanging in here with us.
Well, let's move the clock forward to proposal and marriage. At what point did you decide that you wanted to marry me?
Like 4 months in.
Yeah,
I think that's horrifying too. I think our timelines were different, but we know that well. And I think the only thing that matters is that we eventually got to the same place. But about 4 months in, I don't even need to go into it, but basically we had an experience, and I just felt like David had my back, and he was like, we were a team. Like, I felt so much like a team with him, and that was such a good feeling, and I just was like bursting with love for him. And I just thought, this is the person, I want to be on a team with this guy. This is amazing. I love how it feels to work together. I love how it feels to be together. And I thought we were really good together. And then obviously we dated a little while longer after that, about 1.5 years before we got engaged. But that was when I knew I loved you.
It's funny that you say it like that, because my process of thinking was actually very similar, but I just required a bigger data set.
Yeah.
I required more conversations, more things for us to talk through and work through. And just the other day, one of my friends, he's dating a girl, and he had some questions about some possible areas of friction between them. And I told him that these areas of friction, this is where you find out what your marriage is going to be like.
Yeah.
How do you treat each other when you disagree? How do you treat each other when you don't quite understand why the other person seems to be blowing this thing out of proportion?
Yes. No, exactly. I mean, how many of us have dated someone who, when we say we're not feeling so sure about the relationship, or we're just not feeling good in general, they get super, super angry and they end things, or they act pretty disrespectful towards you. That's their true colors, And I felt like when we were tested, I could tell at times you were super frustrated and I was super frustrated at times, but I think were usually pretty respectful and kind, etc. And so that I knew throughout it all, even though I was frustrated, that I still wanted to be with you and I wanted it to work out. And honestly, a lot of it, I just needed therapy for some things, and that was really helpful. And going to therapy actually helped me to be a better girlfriend to you.
And we recently went to San Diego for a friend's wedding, and I gave a toast there. And one of the things that I said off the cuff as I was giving the toast was the fact that his approval of you when he first met you, that went a long way. And I would say in our courtship, my friends played a very important role because as I was talking through our relationship with them, they were the ones that always came into bat for you. And
thank you guys.
and that went a long way because I trusted my friends.
You know,
and they reassured me at the things that where I was nervous, where my wounds were, where the things that scared me and wanted to send me running for the hills. They were the people that talked me back and said, no, you're being ridiculous. Stop it.
Well, that's actually a really great point to bring up because friends and family are really important. If you don't involve your friends and family when you're dating someone, I think it's a real missed opportunity because the insecurities that I felt around you when we started dating were because you were a potential future spouse. But your friends were not my potential future spouse. So I could just be a little bit more myself, honestly, around them right away. And they're funny and they're kind and they're smart. And so we just hit it off. And so I think they could actually see a little bit more of who I was when I could just relax. And I struggled to be relaxed with you for a little while because I just kept thinking, this is so important. I don't want to mess it up. And so, yeah, they were totally my allies in it. And I kept thinking, even if this goes south, I will be heartbroken, but I've met so many good people through David. And
yeah, I pretty much had to marry you if I wanted to keep all of my friends because you had pretty much stolen them all.
oh.
Well, let's move things forward to wedding and married life. Mm-hmm. How did that go?
Best. Well, our wedding was a little crazy. We got married in we got married in the midst of COVID. So we replanned the wedding a few times, give or take 5 times. But in the end, our wedding day was just absolutely perfect and beautiful. And I felt like the most beautiful woman in the world when David looked at me that day. And
although I didn't cry, I'm sorry.
I know. I kind of wanted you to cry. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little but you're you and you don't cry easily. So I didn't expect that, but it was such a special day with my dad. It was such a special day with my dad and all of our family. And, we had to kind of Skype David's family in from England, which was really sad, to be honest, because we wanted them so much to be there with us. But we were really lucky that they were so willing to be there via video. So we got them. That was awesome. And then we had a little home reception after, which was beautiful with dancing and delicious food and cake. And it was perfect. And then marriage immediately was...
Just before we get to marriage, yes, thank you. The main thing I'd say about our wedding day is I felt very present.
Yes.
I've been in lots of weddings in various parts, and I know how easily it can just sort of like blur by, or it's like one thing after another, after another, after another. But honestly, it felt like we went to church, we got married, and then we had
Daddy,
dinner.
Alexander wants me to talk about how he wasn't there yet.
Okay, we missed Alexander dreadfully in anticipation. Yeah. But it was we went to the church, we got married, we came, and then we had dinner with our family and friends,
and then we got to go to our home
as many as we were allowed, and then
then you drove us home to our condo.
Yeah,
I know. I feel the same way. Honestly, besides the lower bill on our wedding, which was amazing,
I've never felt so rich.
It was so simplified that we were able to focus on each other. And, you know, people since have asked us, well, how did you do it so inexpensively? And it's like, really, how many things do you need to get married? I cared about having a pretty dress. I cared about us having good food.
Mm-hmm. Which was amazing. Yeah. We had Chaldean sort of Eastern Mediterranean style food, and it was delicious. Easily best wedding food I've had at any wedding ever. And it was my own. And I got to go back for seconds, and I didn't have to ask anybody for permission. It's like, I paid for this, I'm going to go eat some more.
Yeah, exactly. And I had this, you know, even before I met David, the High Kings have their, I don't know if it's their song or a cover of a song. It's probably a cover of a song called Marie's Wedding. And I just wanted to dance to that at my wedding. Like, desperately wanted to dance to that with my family, especially with my little nephew, Drew. And I got to do that. And yeah, it was so easy to just focus on each other. And I didn't feel an urgency to like go and take photos or any of that. We did take some photos, but how many photos do you need and how many do you look at? Honestly, most people end up, you know, printing one and putting it on their wall. Oh, honey.
All right, we need to get beyond the wedding then into married life so we can talk about parenthood as well.
I know, Alexander's like, get to me, get to my part. Marriage, I will just say, is joyful and sorrowful to the nth degree. And I've never been so happy in my life. I've never been so sad in my life. David and I lost a baby before Alexander, Olivia, and I think that pretty much wrecked our world. We also just like had the fun of getting to know each other and like living together for the first time.
Which I would say was very smooth.
Yeah. No, definitely. Moving in together was very smooth. We have similar lifestyles, I would say, like ways of living. And
I'm a little bit more of an early bird, though, perhaps, maybe?
A little bit more of an early bird and a little bit neater, if we're being honest. But not, you know, we both have strengths that help balance each other out. And then we did our fair share of laughing at each other as we were trying to figure out how to love each other. And I think that's really important. I didn't know it was important until we were laughing at each other and at ourselves. Yeah, and then we got pregnant with Alexander, and honestly, we just prayed every day that he would be healthy and strong, and he's the biggest gift that we've been given. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but I would not change a thing. What's been your favorite memories of marriage, I guess?
Oh, that is really difficult. For me, it's the quotidian. It's the everyday that's the bit that I like the most. Whether it's just bringing you a cup of tea and some toast in bed, which was something that we had a little bit of a fight about before we got married as to whether or not such things were going to be allowed. I'm
going to blame this on my mom. I was really, really trained to never bring food or drinks into my bedroom unless it was water. Because my mom is the most clean person in the world. And so she just knew crumbs and stuff would end up under beds. So I felt like, no way are we bringing food in our bed in the morning, every morning. But it's so lovely. And we have a tray. You know, we have trays that we bring tea and toast and things up on. And we're careful. And we're adults who can wash our sheets and all of that, so it's wonderful.
If and when one of us does, perhaps by accident, spill the tea everywhere.
I haven't done it in a while.
Well, I think tea and toast is probably the perfect way to round this out. Thank you for coming on the show, and thank you, Alexander.
Are you kidding me? You have nothing to say now? Come on, Bubba.
All right, it's time for bed.
Oh.
Okay, he doesn't look happy. We're going to wrap this up.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
I love you.
Love you too.
Anything.
And now we hand things over to Andrew.
Well, hello, Pints with Jack. We have just concluded the Eros chapter, and so I am here with my much better half, the crowd favorite, Christin Ditchfield-Lazo.
Well, it's great to be with you, honey.
Well, and it's a very special day. We are actually in Florida at my in-laws' dining room table where last night we celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. So we thought it would be perfect to record here. There's a beautiful orchid and some lovely roses on the table. How much more Eros could we want?
We've got the perfect atmosphere, that's for sure.
Well, we just wanted to spend just a few minutes with you all telling you our story because I think more than most, our story has everything to do with C.S. Lewis, and how we met Lewis had a lot to do with it. So when we meet him in heaven, we will have much to give him thanks for. It kind of all began with a picture. I had seen Christin's book in years past, The Family Guide to Narnia, but I didn't recognize her name. And I figured if I didn't recognize her name, arrogant as I am, why would I want to, why should I buy this book? But even though I didn't buy her book, I recognized the name I had seen it before, and noticed that her name was in part of a collection that I had been asked to contribute to. A friend of ours, Carolyn Curtis, was an editor and a writer, and I had met her in some Lewis conferences, and I had participated in a conference on Lewis and women. And I actually was just in the crowd asking annoying questions, and so the next year Carolyn put me on the panel. Following that, she said, "Hey, I'm putting together a book on women and C.S. Lewis, and would you like to join?"
Yes, and Carolyn and I have been friends for years as women authors and speakers. And she asked me if I would contribute a chapter based on A Family Guide to Narnia, looking at Lewis's female characters, his fictional characters, and exploring their character qualities and attributes and how they reflect Lewis's view on women. At the same time, unbeknownst to me, she'd asked Andrew to write a chapter on his area of expertise, which will be a surprise to no one, the novel Till We Have Faces.
Everybody take a drink.
And how the character of Oriol illustrates Lewis's approach and respect for women. And so each of us contributed a chapter to this book, but from our own respective homes and lives and ministries, and we didn't meet each other in person until much later. The book had come out, and Carolyn was organizing interviews to promote it, and she asked us both, she invited each of us to be on a radio show to talk about the book, and that's how we met.
I remember the interview really well. It was December 5th, 2015. I had, of course, recognized her name, and then I looked her up on social media, and I thought, oh, she's pretty attractive. That never hurts. Couldn't find out whether or not she was single, and so ended up doing some digging and found that out. So I just wanted to know a little bit about her, and then we were on the radio together for, I think about 45 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had to take turns because they couldn't have us both on at the same time. So each of us was listening online to each other's portion of the interview, and we tagged each other on social media as one does. Oh, great to be on the show with, what was that guy's name again? Oh yes, Andrew Lazo. Great to be on the show with Andrew. But immediately after ending the broadcast and doing the appropriate tagging and promoting, I got a friend request.
And then you thought,
oh no. I have run into a few lonely guys over the years who've reached out to me through Facebook Messenger friend requests, and I thought, I forgot to look and see if this guy was single, and I hope he's not just hitting on me. I'd had some kind of unpleasant experiences with that, and so I determined to just to be aloof, friendly but aloof. I didn't want to misread him, but I wanted to be very cautious about our friendship and just and see what would happen. But I certainly wasn't expecting anything to come of it.
Well, I thought she made the first move because she tagged me on social media. So.
That's all it took, huh?
Well, and we enjoyed a few back-to-back or back-and-forth messages on Facebook Messenger, but every time I suggested maybe we talk on the phone, she was like, yeah, I gotta go.
Well, I didn't want to encourage you because I wasn't sure what your motives were or what you were after, and like I said, I've had some bad experiences, and I thought, well, I just need to keep my distance. But we found so much to talk about. We had so much in common. I was enjoying the conversation so much that despite myself, I kept getting drawn in. And then you'd make a move, and I think, oh dear, I know, I need to step back.
Well, and I don't know that I was necessarily making a move. At this point in my life, I thought, you know what? I may be single for the rest of my life, but I have wonderful friendships and I have wonderful work that I believe in. And if that's the case, and if that's what the Lord has for me, I was really at a place where I was content with just having the rich philia relationships. And I was enjoying the fact that Christin and I had so much in common. And so for me, it didn't feel like I was kind of making a move necessarily. I was enjoying her intellect. I was enjoying her approach. And then it turns out that I was doing a little work for Max McLean in Florida. And I have family on both coasts. And as it turns out, I was going to be driving about 4 or 5 miles away from where Christin lived.
Yeah, and you suggested that we get together for coffee, for lunch or brunch or something, and talk Narnia. And again, there wasn't anything. You didn't make me uncomfortable, anything that you did or said. I just was a little gun shy, just a little nervous about some, like I said, some of those. It's tough being single. It really is. And some of those relationships are tough to navigate. And is this a friendship or is it something more? But I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? And I had done all my Christmas shopping and I didn't have a really good excuse. So I thought, well, you know what, let's give it a try. And maybe best case scenario, there's a friendship there and we have good conversation. We'll talk about Narnia and who knows, maybe we'll write another chapter in another book sometime.
We actually weren't really quite sure about where our attraction was initially. And literally, what I loved to do when I wasn't teaching school, when I was on vacation, I love cooking, I love food, so I picked a good restaurant, and I love talking about Lewis, which is sometimes rare enough. And those are two of my philia loves. And so sharing a meal with somebody, talking about Lewis with somebody who really knew, that to me, my approach, at least as far as I could see, from my own perspective, was one of, hey, this really is friendship. I can share the deep things with her. But when we sat down, we found out that not only did we share Lewis, the irony is, listeners, we didn't even talk about Narnia that time. It took us years to finally have our first Narnia conversation because we had so much else in common.
That's right. We talked about all kinds of literature and poetry and reading. We're both huge readers. We also talked about some of the heartaches and pain that we had both been through, different kinds of grief and loss, the challenges of being single and being a single adult in a ministry and a career. We had both been teachers. And so we found so many things that we could connect with. And one of the things that really struck me about Andrew is that I could tell that he had he has a big, larger than life personality, but there's so much depth underneath that. And I could see that he had been through some pain and some hard things and that he had worked through those things in his faith and grown stronger because of them. And that intrigued me. I wanted to get to know more of that side of him as well.
Well, and it was a pleasure to learn from you that you had gone through some difficult times and to hear how the Lord had been faithful to you. We had real talk. It was real conversation. And even after that, I wasn't necessarily, I don't think I went away from that meeting, kind of thinking, oh, this is the one. I just was grateful that there was such a connection. In fact, we talked so long, I was supposed to pick up my aunt at work in Tampa that day and had to call her and say, oh, I'm going to be late. And then that night, the text started.
That's right. I had recommended a book. Jane Austen is one of my other passions in addition to Lewis, and I recommended Persuasion, which is my favorite. It's hard to have a favorite, just like with Lewis, but one of my favorite of Jane's novels. And Lewis was a Jane Austen fan. I mentioned this to Andrew, and I recommended the book. And to my surprise, he downloaded it immediately and then spent the next evening and the next 2 or 3 days sending me quotes from all the best parts.
It took me 25 years, forgive me, to finish Pride and Prejudice. I just didn't get the cleverness of it. I started when I was 18. I finished it when I was 43. But when we were talking, Christin said, oh, I'm sure you've read Persuasion. I said, oh, I haven't. She said, it's one of the greatest love stories ever. And I said, well, I'm a sucker for a good love story. And I did. I downloaded that night. I texted her all the funny bits. And it really began to, it kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, we were talking and texting like teenagers back and forth. We had a voice app, messaging app that we used. And every morning I would wake up and Andrew had read me a poem to start my day. And we were talking way into the night. And even when we'd said, I've got plans or I'm going to be busy, we still found ways to message each other. And then we got to a point where we suddenly realized that there's something going on here. This is pretty serious. And
she actually did pick up the phone when I got her phone number. I was allowed to call her. The voice app that she recommended was called Voxer, and it was a great way to kind of talk almost in real time, but also to send recorded messages, and so that was a great way. And in those subsequent week and a half, there was just a lot of constant communication. And then I found out that Christin was actually coming to Texas for a writers' conference.
Yes, I was supposed to be there to speak at a retreat and participate with a bunch of women authors and speakers. And Andrew and I have been having such meaningful and deep conversations. But we were getting to a point where it was like, okay, we have some other things that if we're going to go forward, if this is something, if God is in this, and it kind of feels like he is, then there's some conversations we need to have face to face. There's some deeper things we want to talk about if we want to even consider if this might be a relationship that God is calling us into. And if not, we need to not spend so much time talking and sending messages. We need to get on with our lives. But we decided that we would get together. Andrew mentioned that his 50th birthday was coming up, and he was having a big party with all of his friends and family. And I decided, you know what, I can come into town a week early. I can stay with a friend and be there for his party, because I feel like God is doing something here, and it might be significant for me to be here at this moment in his life and for us to move forward in whatever this relationship was. So I flew in for my conference a week early, and wow, that was a powerful week that we spent.
You know, Lewis says in the Eros chapter that friendship can often turn to romance within the first 30 minutes, and in fact will likely do so unless the two people are loved elsewhere or are mutually repulsive. And of course, neither of those were true. The connection was immediately there. And so I think it started as friendship, but it also, edged very close to Eros, right away. There was an availability there and a vulnerability, and that was happening.
Sometimes people talk about, I stopped looking and then magically the person appeared. Sometimes people romanticize their stories. But I think what really helped us, especially in those early days, it happened very quickly. In those early days was that neither of us was desperate. We had both had our hearts broken over the years. We both had hopes and dreams that died, and some that were resurrected. But we knew better than to kind of... I think to want to pursue a bad relationship or an unhealthy relationship. We knew we needed that like we needed a hole in the head. So if this was a God thing, if it was going to be a good thing, that would be awesome. But we weren't trying too hard. And so we, as well as we could, we tried to be our real, honest selves and not put up any pretense. We weren't trying to impress each other. We weren't trying to make it into something. We were willing to see what God was going to do.
That's really, I hadn't thought about that before. And that was another point of friendship, that we were both alone and that we were both wished that we weren't alone, but we both had come to a point of contentment and satisfaction. And so there wasn't this kind of angst and urgency to it. I also want to say, especially for our single listeners who wish that they weren't, there aren't any formulas. We tried them all between the two of us, and there really aren't any formulas. They say the right one will come as soon as you stop looking. It's just a matter of being faithful to God from day to day and allowing God to do whatever he will do and giving thanks in all circumstances, for that's the will of God for us in Christ Jesus. And so I think we had come to a place for both of us where we were content with our lives. Nevertheless, we welcomed this glad friendship that seemed to be stirring with other things.
And having reached a place of contentment didn't mean that we were always content, that it didn't still hurt to be single, that we weren't still longing or lonely at times, but reaching some place of maybe, if not perfect contentment, some place of being willing to hold things loosely and to trust God that he was going to work things out. That enabled us to be our real selves with each other and not be quite so desperate or anxious in our courtship process. So it's not that we got to this place of maturity and then God said, okay, finally you're ready. Some people get married and grow up. Some people grow up and get married. I think God works in a bunch of different ways, but for us, that's kind of how it unfolded.
Yeah, not for me anyway, not perfect contentment and not blissful contentment every day. So a lot of days it looked a lot like grudging acceptance. But at least it was acceptance that, yes, Lord, I trust that you love me. I trust that you're working in my life. I don't understand why it's not the way that I want it to look. Nevertheless, I trust you, and I know that nothing will get in the way of your love for me. And so that really helped me. So she came to Houston. And she sat on the couch in my classroom and she watched me teach my classes all week because...
Well, I wanted to see if he was a good teacher. I thought that's going to really stink if he's not.
That was going to be a deal breaker.
Having been a teacher myself. And I also wanted to see, how he interacted with a wide variety of people. I wanted to see what his relationships were like, if they were healthy. I wanted to see when he walked out of the room, how the students or his coworkers talked about him. And, there were a lot of Andrew Lazo fans on that campus. That he is a great guy. And that was repeated by everyone that I met. I saw that he had a lot of great, good, healthy relationships with a lot of people who really admired and respected him and appreciated him. This was important particularly because we got to know each other so quickly. And it was a matter of a week or two from the time that we first met, and only, I think, 3 weeks from the radio interview.
Yep.
And we were already thinking that something serious was afoot here. And so because we didn't live in the same city and we didn't get to see each other every day and we hadn't known each other very long, it was really important to me to see that there were other people who could vouch for you. And we did have a lot of friends in common. Yeah. It turned out a lot of people that we knew. And that was really helpful in getting to see the real you. And boy, by the end of the week...
things were stirring. And... it just was, that's when I realized that I was absolutely falling in love in a way that I had never understood before. It was ridiculous. It overwhelmed me so much that I got angry at my married friends for not telling me what a great thing that was going on in between married partners. I just had no sense of what being in love was like until I had met Christin. So at the end of the week, I had to drive her out to her conference, and we were on our way to visit some family she had in town. And she did something sweet. She said something sweet, did something sweet, and I just said, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. I wasn't planning on it. I said, "Will you marry me?" and she said,
"Yes." Yes,
and
I will.
I had to pull the car over because the Holy Spirit, bam, was just all over that car. We were both in tears. We both had no idea what we had just done, but then we knew exactly what we had just done, and it just made sense. So it was 17 days that it took us to get engaged.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk to young people...
We always tell them we got engaged after 17 days, but we knew that we did not know each other nearly well enough to get married right away. So we waited a whole year. We set our wedding date for a year from the time that we got engaged so that we would have time to really get to know each other, visit back and forth. I was in Florida. Andrew was in Houston. We wanted to get to know each other's family and friends. We wanted time for premarital counseling, which we highly recommend. Even as old as we were and mature as we were and experienced as we are in relationships and communication, it's still an epic thing. And so we made time to really do that, to spend the next year together.
It was great, and getting to know her family was fantastic. We tried to let it be no more than 6 weeks without seeing each other, and a lot of Southwest and catching a plane on the weekends or whatever. But it was a joy. And the 17 days didn't faze Christin's family at all because, as we heard yesterday in this very room where we're recording, Christin's mother and father, and actually one of her aunts and uncles, had gotten engaged after 11 days. Now we don't suggest this as policy, but for us it really worked. We could see what was happening, but we also then took that next year and we got married on 1/7/17. So it took us 17 days to get engaged, and we got married on January 7th, 2017. Since then, it's all been flowers and bliss, right? Living with me is just so easy, isn't
Hearts
it?
and candy, and, it's poetry every day.
Yeah.
No, the fun thing is we started out with a lot of poetry, a lot of great literature, finding all these things that we had in common, and we're so full of romance and symbolism, and we share some of that in our wedding website and in interviews and things. We went all out for the symbolism and the poetry and the metaphor of it all. But then there's the reality of two sinners living under the same roof and doing life together. And that's been challenging. It's been good, but it's been challenging.
Well, it's two sinners traveling together.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Oh my gosh, that's part of why you go on a honeymoon, because traveling is stressful. And Christin and I do things in very different ways. And so, yeah, we have a number of cathedrals all over England where I made her cry.
I joke about that I cried in every cathedral in England when we went over for the Lewis conference. But what I did is I lit candles and I prayed that God would help us to learn to communicate and learn to know each other in a, not beyond the romance of it, beyond the Eros, into that storge and philia, and agape. We really needed the agape love of God to bear with each other and learn to understand each other and overcome the disagreements and the challenges that are part of relationship.
Well, and that's one of the things that we'll talk about in this last chapter of the book, is how agape or agape steps into the natural loves and strengthens the natural loves. And so when I'm not feeling particularly romantic or swept away, the encouragement to continue to care for and cherish, deliberately cherish. And Christin does that for me. It happens when you're sick. It happens when we're not in the right mood, whatever. And that's one of the things that we have seen her parents bear witness to for 50 years is, yes, the romance is still there and the affection is still there. A lot of that has subsided into being a family. You know, there's a lot of storge, and we can see when we look at mom and dad what Lewis meant, that storge is responsible for 9/10 of the solid, goodness or pleasure in the world.
Well, now that we've been married 5 years, which is not a long by many standards, but it's still, after 5 years, we have a life that we've cultivated together. We were alone for much of our lives and had these whole histories behind us, but now we have 5 years, 6 years, counting our engagement, of memories that we have made together and parts of each other's lives that we've borne witness to. And that creates a family, an affection of its own that nobody else has been there through these things with me other than you and you for me. So,
well, she's got a large family, but there are now 4 nieces and nephews and 2 more on the way. And Christin is fond of pointing out to me, and I'm grateful that she does, that they will never have a world where there wasn't an Uncle Andrew. And as ironic as being Uncle Andrew is, if you've read The Magician's Nephew, to be part of this family and to be welcomed in is marvelous. I got for Christmas, one of my gifts was a custom-made apron, and it said "Brother, Father, Uncle Andrew," because of my coming priesthood and all the rest. But to be welcomed in, I found this kind of ocean of storge, which was not a very strong love for me. My family has been distant and difficult. And so the other loves come in. I think one of the ways that we've discovered a lot of things that we didn't know that we liked. And so Christin's family loves over Christmas to do puzzles. And her brother Nate especially has puzzle trays, and we do puzzles. And so that's something that we have imported into our Eros. Puzzles. So we brought it over from Christin's family, so that's storge, but now we'll go through Barnes & Noble and we'll pick out, I love Vincent van Gogh. And so we've got a Van Gogh puzzle. We've got a Jane Austen puzzle that we're working on right now. And so that's a way that you can add philia to Eros. And when we're sitting at the end of the day working the puzzle, it's not, hearts and flowers and romance. We're chatting about our day and we're just investing our lives together. But that little puzzle table and the chairs that we got are part of our home life, part of our household life.
Right. We're thankful for all the things that we do share, that we do have in common, because the way we think is very different and the way that we do things is very different. But having that philia and that storge helps us, I think, in those moments when the Eros is on the down, is waning, or when we really need that agape love. Just having these things in common that has bonded our hearts, and we actively look for things that we can do to strengthen that bond.
Well, and this is one of those as well. We've been grateful to have Christin on with Pints with Jack. We're looking forward to, I think, is it Horse and His Boy this season? And so our listeners are clamoring for Christin to come back. We just got to teach on Lewis at Sunday school together, and teaching together, even though we have kind of different styles, has been another way that we have grown. What we mostly want to say is that our love is a testimony to God's faithfulness to us in the midst of our difficulties and longings and absences and grief, and in the midst of our joys and the loves that we have. This has been a way that God has been incredibly faithful. And there was a lot of waiting involved, and there were a lot of sad years involved. But and there has been some sadness, since we got married. But it's also a way where we can keep going out of ourselves towards the other. And when we remember to do that, it makes for a pretty nice day.
Absolutely. As one of my other favorite poets, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, says, God's gifts put man's best dreams to shame. And that's certainly been true. You are a gift to me.
Oh, and you're a gift to me, and you bring so much else with me too. So it's lovely to be here with your family, celebrating love, and it's great to tell you, listeners, our stories. And we get lots of people who come up to us and say, "Oh, my daughter has been single for all of these years, and your story gives us hope." Well, it gives us hope too.
Yes.
To remember that God has never forgotten us. We're never off his mind. He always exults over us with singing. So I love that our story is a little bit like Jack and Joy's story. It's a belated story. Late have I loved thee, I think Augustine said, but right on time. So that's a little bit of our story, and we look forward to plunging through the rest of our book together, and look forward to having Christin join us again. If you want to, your website still has all of that, right?
It does. The kids are doing it these days, putting your love story on a wedding website, and we did that so that all our friends and family could follow along and hear our story. And then I took the text and the pictures and the things that we shared there and put them on my own website. So on ChristinDitchfield.com, and my name is spelled like Christ in, ChristinDitchfield.com, you'll find our love story, and you can read all the things that we shared when we were newly engaged, and just full of poetry.
Yes, well, there's more poetry to come. I gave her for Christmas a card promising her some time with a blanket out in the sunshine in the springtime, and some poetry. And so we're happy to share that with you. It was also kind of a Pinterest dream wedding.
Yes.
So we had lots of touches and flourishes that some of you may enjoy. So thanks for spending some time with us and letting us exult in our love. And we pray that God will continue to reveal his love in all of the relationships that you have in your life, and even reveal his love and his faithfulness and his steadfast hope in the absence and longing, because ultimately we are not home here. And until we get to our heavenly home, we won't be fully complete in his love. So we await that day, and thank you for joining us. So signing off, it's Andrew Lazo.
And Christin Lazo.
On Pints with Jack, and thanking you for joining us.
I hope you'll enjoy that peek into the Bates and Lazo households. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you for your continued support, particularly our top-tier Patreon supporters, Thomas, Deborah, Anonymous, Bill and Joanna, Snort, Bud, Shane, John, Kevin, Brian, Kay, Paul, Kimberly, Gillis, Gary, Stephen, Matt, Kelly, Chris, John, James, Kate, Peter, David and Rowdy. And please join us next time, when we'll be going further up and further in. Cheers!